Hey, MMT followers, Christina Fuges with MoldMaking Technology for another quick MMT chat. My guests today are here to speak about apprenticeships and training, maybe a little bit on mentorship and careers in mold manufacturing. They are all from Edro Engineering and Specialty Steels in Pennsylvania. They are Nick Carroll, who is in sales, Rob Curran, forgive me if I said that wrong, Rob, in metallurgy, and Mike Guscott, who was and is instrumental in Nick and Rob's training. So I've known Nick and Rob for about 4 or 5 years since they started at Edro, and I've known Mike for a bit longer than that, I guess. Edro has been a longtime supporter of MoldMaking Technology. So hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
So let's get into it. So Nick and Rob, I'm basically interested in following up with you on your journey with this training at Edro and workforce development and your career development at Edro. So why don't we first start off with, give me a little snapshot of, and either one can take your turn, your education and your background, and then your current role at Edro.
All right, so I can start us off. Rob and I have the same education background, actually. Both Penn State graduates in material science and engineering. And then I actually joined the company after Rob. I think, Rob, you found them through the school and joined Edro first, right?
Yeah. Actually, Mike sent out a job posting to our department head, and he kind of just distributed it through all the students. And it was really close to where I grew up and where I'm from. Conshohocken, which is about 25-30 minutes outside of Philly. And yeah, after that I kind of just inquired to Mike about it, and I guess me and Nick, in the field of metallurgy, there's not a lot of younger people going into it, especially metallurgy is a subsect of material science nowadays with the universities. And a lot of people are more interested in ceramics or electronic materials or plastic processing. So our class size was pretty small. There was only about 15 people that we graduated with that were going into metallurgy. And I was, most of those kids had careers lined up beforehand. Before they graduated. I think me and Nick and a few other people were one of the last few people who had prospects lined up for employment. And I thought that the Edro model was just kind of a good introduction into this field, particularly with tooling. Not a lot of our classmates were going into tooling. Most of them were going into production, mill work, that kind of thing. Okay. So yeah, it was a good. It was just a really interesting program that they had lined up, and it was kind of good to get a taste of everything from the production side, sales side.
Are you talking about school, or are you talking about Edro?
No, that would
be general. Yeah, so school. Sorry, going from the tangent there. To backtrack with school, yeah, it was mostly just a lot of hardcore science and theory with respect to metals and metals processing. Okay. So me and Nick both have the engineering background because it is an engineering field. You go through basically all the core engineering classes, all the calculus, all the physics.
So you both took the similar education, and then when you got to Edro, It sounds like you probably had similar training to begin with, and then you kind of took different paths, right?
Yeah, so Rob joined in on the technical side and was working really heavily with our metallurgists on different materials. And then when I joined, I was really working more on the sales side. So I was underneath a few of our product managers, and then Mike Guscott was leading the program. And initially the program worked where we did, like you said, we had training in the shop with our whole entire team, getting to meet everyone and kind of explore all the different areas of Edro and not just go directly into our whatever our direction was. And after that initial period, then you focus more on one section. So for sales, it was going out with our different sales team and actually meeting customers and exploring the industry a little bit more. And Rob, I guess you can speak a little bit on the technical side where you were focused.
Yeah, I was more on overseeing the quality of the heat treatment department, as well as any failures that came up that were production related. And then also, I was overseeing a lot of the conversion side of things, so the rollings from the mills.
Okay.
So yeah.
So Mike, what do you look for in employees? So what was it about these two? Like, how did that all happen on your end of it?
Well, what I'd say is this, really, Christina, that of course we're not in the plastics business, we're in the mold side of the business where we make and supply steels for use in those molds. So what we were looking for really was to try and build up a team of people for the future where they wouldn't just be salespeople, or they wouldn't just be people that we hired from different backgrounds, but people that were metallurgically trained, because steel is our business. So why not try to hire a team of people for the future who are educated in that? So that was the basic idea behind the initial thought. We then thought that we shouldn't hire people and put them into jobs. We should hire people and let them come and have an exposure really to all the main aspects of our business, and they could then decide and focus on really what they wanted to do during the 18-month program that we set up. And looking as we did, we went to the universities. First, we actually advertised in the paper, and we got all kinds of people that said they could sell ice to Eskimos and everything. They were the people we wanted, and of course, it wasn't what we wanted at all. They had 25 years experience in this and that. And we were looking, and so then we approached the universities with material science programs, and Penn State was one that came back to us, and we have a close relationship with them there now. I think they like the program, and that's really the background of the program here. I think that what we can add to the company for the future is getting people that are bright, people that have ambition, and people that are educated in the area that we are. And so that's basically the idea. And Nick and Rob fit this category perfectly.
Perfectly.
They proved that in the last few years.
And I understand too that they were part of developing the program. They weren't just told to do this or that, right? They were actually part of developing it. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I just sort of put down what I thought we should have as a program when we started it, because we didn't have any apprentices then. And then it's more important that we do this together so that we develop a program that isn't just what we think is great, but it's really a program that everybody, in particular the apprentices themselves, are excited about.
Right. So what is it about the program, Nick and Rob, that you thought was unique or was appealing to you?
I think the key for me looking at the program was it's kind of intimidating coming into the industry, especially because the industry seems to have so much experience and maybe a little bit older in general. So when you're coming in fresh with no experience and really not knowing the industry, it's intimidating. So this program really let us kind of go through the full process and learn our materials, learn how the business side works, and then explore the different customers and see how they run their businesses too. So it was really kind of going step by step and letting us go at our own pace and kind of develop this program with different trainings and really feel comfortable that way. Once I was actually alone and doing outside things, I was ready to go. And I think that was probably the same you kind of saw, right, Rob?
Yeah. For me, more specifically, it was kind of like you said, just trying to get your head around what these products are actually going to go into and what they're going to be put under in terms of applications and stresses and that kind of thing. I think a lot of especially more technical people can kind of get their heads down in the weeds and just focus on getting the production done and getting everything out of the shop, but they're not really focusing on where this is actually going to end up. And so just getting the customer's perspective and getting the mold maker, die maker, what kind of issues they're having, and trying to just get a better picture and understanding of what you're doing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So from when you started till today, what is the role, or how do you continue to be a part of updating the program? Is that still happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first joined, there's a structure and there's certain goals every 3, 6 months that you want to meet. But there's a lot of room where there's not a ton structure that's really up to you. So it's
Okay.
going out in the shop and we would spend a
Hello.
week or two. Oh, you're back, Mike. But
That's
But
okay.
we would spend a week or two in the shop and then develop a program for how to train and actually understand our machines. The next apprentices who come in will pass down that training that we kind of developed ourselves. They would edit it and make it a little bit cleaner and then ask us questions and how we approach different people and different things that came up. And that training kind of keeps going. So as we're progressing, we continue to pass down more trainings we created. And then you have a whole network of past apprentices. I think we've had maybe 6 now. And you
Okay.
have the whole network, and everyone's pretty close with each other that they can refer back to us.
Are they all still with Edro?
They
The
are,
apprentices? Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
That's
We've
good.
had
You feel the
we've
same,
had a
Rob?
good history.
What's
Yeah,
that?
exactly. It's working. So do you agree, like, in terms of the changes that you've seen in the program that you've been part of? Can you speak
Yeah.
to that also?
Well, more specifically, I guess if, like just to double down on what Nick said, it's kind of just, helping out all the younger people, not quite younger people, but the newer people coming up.
Yeah.
Me specifically, I kind of transitioned to a applications engineering role where I'm not really doing too much in the shop. I'm
Okay.
kind of I'm more on the road nowadays. Well, minus this whole
Yes,
coronavirus.
exactly.
But before then, I was basically on the road 50 to 75% of the time. And
Wow.
yeah, so that's given me a lot of insight and a lot of, it's definitely some valuable experience that I can kind of share with the younger guys coming up. And I've definitely been doing a lot of that, especially with our one guy, Jason, who's just starting to kind of follow behind me on some of the things that I've been doing. So yeah, but it's a lot of, close knit communication and just trying to pass down the knowledge that you acquire
Yeah.
through
Have
through
you
experience.
have you noticed, I mean, you guys are young too, but I would imagine with each that comes in, like the next generation has a different learning style. Like they have different needs emotionally, like mentally. It
Mm.
seems they might want to go about this differently. Have you noticed that as you grow into the program that the people coming after you prefer a different way to train and learn?
I wouldn't say I've noticed any kind of generational or by the year change as much as it is individuals. So that's kind of where we like our program being still open as we do have some structure. I think everyone kind of handles training and learning differently. But as far as just year by year how they handle it, I don't think there's been a huge difference that I've seen.
Okay. So how about in communication styles? Has that, I mean, COVID totally, as we showed today, this whole virtual world is different for many generations. I would assume the
Right.
younger generation gets this more and is more accustomed to being on camera, and taking pictures and speaking this way. But how has that impacted even Edro's culture in terms of even now with COVID, prior to COVID, and how do you think the way you communicate and meet is going to change after this is all over?
I think the whole team has gotten better with WebExes and online meetings. Um, but as far as communication, it's relative. I don't think you can overstate how important it is to do things in person as well.
I agree.
So it's important to have these online meetings when we can and when it makes sense. But for a lot of heavy training, and especially when it relates to the apprenticeship program, I think it's really important to get people in front and actually one-on-ones, and that's how you're going to learn best. And that's also
Yeah,
how we build a good connection with the company, I would say.
yeah,
It's going to our different locations and meeting the people you work on a daily basis. It's just I think you can't really overstate how important it is to get them to these different locations and meet those people.
yeah. I mean, for me specifically, I think I've grown as a metallurgist exponentially over these past 2 years, and I attribute most of that to just being in front of a room full of engineers and they're asking you their opinion on what to use for a specific component in a mold or why they're having failure problems or issues and problems. And once you're under the gun like that, you tend not to forget a lot of the things that you learned, and it tends to stick with you. So
I agree.
I think there's not really a substitute for experience. You can kind of do all the instructional videos and read up about anything you want, but you're not really going to fully absorb it and fully let it sink in unless you're out there getting your hands dirty.
Unless you're in it. Yeah, unless you're
Yep.
in it. Do you think that, how does that translate to your customers? So now I've been talking to a lot of mold builders the past 3 or 4 months, going through this crisis too. And just exactly what you're saying is impacting the way they work too, the way they work with their supply chain, and their customers. So how are you dealing with servicing your customers, knowing what their needs are, being there for them when you can't physically be there for them, unless you can now?
For me, it's just been a lot of design reviews. We'll kind of just do the same thing we're doing here, where they're sharing drawings or sharing pictures, and just us trying to help them out as best as we can.
Virtually.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really focusing on the technical information as much as you can, how you can improve their processes. I think it's very focused on the actual technical information right now.
Yeah, I did have one shop. They were pretty amazed that their crew was able to help a customer repair a mold virtually by doing this, using WebEx and actually walking them through the process. And it was successful, so they were happy they could at least help that way, since they couldn't be there, right? So this technology is a plus if it's used the right way, right? You can do it.
Oh, absolutely. And we do our technical trainings. We have new technologies always coming out, and we have done some of those with our customers too, if they're available. And again, it all depends on their workload.
Yeah, that's true. So do you guys have any opinions on the term mentorship? And how do you define that? Is that something that plays into your training culture at all?
I would think so. I mean, Mike was really my mentor. I got him on the phone, and now I just like to talk him up. But no, it's really important to have that person when you're going through a situation you haven't experienced before, especially in sales. I'm fresh out of college. I've never actually dealt in sales. It's nice knowing you have someone that you can truly trust and be honest and open with. And that's the real important part, I think, is that trust you have with them. And then you can just explain exactly what happened or what the situation is, and then take on a bunch of information from them and how they've dealt with situations that are similar. Without that, I think that was such a huge part of Edro. And it wasn't just Mike. There was other guys I would reach out to as well. But Mike was truly, I think, my mentor going in.
Do you find it goes the other way also, Mike? MoldMaking Technology launched the pilot mentorship program, and it was a 6-month journey. I followed 6 pairs, and what I was trying to prove out was that mentorship is not just one-sided. So like, it's natural for us to think, oh, Nick's going to learn everything from Mike. What we discovered was how much the more seasoned generation was learning from the younger generation, and it was awesome to see that, to actually prove that out. Do you feel that way too, Mike?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I'm old enough to be these people's grandfather, and so there's a big generation gap here, and it's amazing how much you can learn about things from young people that have been educated recently and can add there. So at Edro, we've tried to make a culture that's very open and very much, where we can go back and forth. You can go and tell anybody what you think and be sure that they're not going to fire you anyway. They might not like it, but so we've encouraged this openness, and I think this is important. And I think all of us, I'm sure you're the same, Christina, but we've all had mentors at various times in our career. And I think it's really important from that. But I believe, as you say, it's very much a two-way thing there, where in this dramatic change that we've had in the last 50 years, business today is so different from what it was, that as you're dealing with people that are coming in today, there are many, many things you can learn from them. So I appreciate what you say there, Nick, and I'm glad to have been a mentor to you, and I will be your mentor, but I think you've also taught me a lot of stuff with things going.
Do you agree, Rob? Do you agree with that philosophy on mentorship?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, definitely.
Rob,
yeah, I mean, from my side, from the technical side, you can learn, like I said before, you can learn everything you want in a book. But a lot of this job is just shooting from the hip most of the time, and kind of relying on your previous knowledge and kind of just you know, there's a lot of guesswork. And with that guesswork, to be good at it, you have to have a lot of experience. So specifically for me, like the two metallurgists at Editorial, Doug Trail and Bob Friedrich, were very instrumental in getting me where I am now. And also Patricia Miller, who's on, you know, the Udalholm side, definitely took me under her wing. And I'm still pretty, you know, I'm in contact with her a lot. But yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful. I know her well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I always forget that Edro is that family of companies. Like, you have access to more probably than I think you have access to in terms of expertise at your fingertips, right?
Yeah. And even some of our customers and people we work with in heat treat, I still, you know, I'm constantly going back and forth, and they're teaching me things and I'm teaching them things on the metallurgy side. So, you know, it definitely goes both ways.
What do you think the biggest challenge is right now to training? And not right now, COVID, right now, just in general.
I think the one aspect that was most important for me was getting actually to a customer and seeing what our materials are going into. And some of the challenges are finding the right customers who are going to let you in. We obviously have some very well-established, long-lasting relationships with these customers, and that's how we've done it in the past. Is we'll bring a new guy in on a sales call, and they'll be close with them, and we'll let them know, hey, we would love to show them around the shop if we could bring this guy in. And if they say yes, then we'll bring them along. And actually, that's how they'll see how the material flows and how the industry works. So I think the more exposure you can get to your customers, your suppliers, and everywhere in between, I think that's the challenge and the most important part.
And so that is the big challenge right now, then.
That is an exceptional challenge right now.
And it could be for the foreseeable future, depending on how that shop, right, is handling the situation. So that's going to be interesting, because I don't know what the substitute is for that. So in terms of that, you've been doing this long enough, and you've probably been working with enough customers, mold shops. What, I got to ask, like, what are you seeing out there? And what are some trends, or what are some pain points? Again, outside of COVID, because I know there's a lot going on in that space, but in terms of the mold material, you know, the steel side of building a mold, what have you learned, or what are you seeing out there?
As related to the apprenticeship program, or just in general? In general,
just in general.
So right now, the biggest thing is we have a lot related to the medical business, so a lot related to COVID, and just getting out material as fast as we can, speeding up lead times any way we can, and just getting that material to the customers, because everything is obviously such a rush right now. That's always the challenge, I think. And I think you'll see a lot of medical companies, or people building molds for medical companies, have been very busy.
Yes.
So I think that's been the biggest challenge, and I think we've been very successful actually doing that and speeding up a lot of our different processes.
Yeah, I think most of the shops I'm hearing from, even their supply chain, their component suppliers, mold material suppliers, hot runner suppliers, everyone's pretty much coming through. So, I mean, which speaks to the community of mold manufacturing anyway. So that really doesn't surprise me, especially when it's something, when there's human lives at stake. Let's face it, people are going to react a little bit differently, even though a lot of these guys and gals work on products that have meaning, you know, everything we use. But this urgency behind it has really, it's just a great light that it has shown on mold manufacturing nowadays.
Right, and it's a global pandemic that I think everyone's thinking about 24/7, and you can just tell when you're talking to your customers or within the company, there's just a different feeling around when you're talking about it. So everyone kind of joins together, I feel like, and really works harder to get these jobs done.
Yep, to get them done. How do you see mold manufacturing coming out of this virus, this pandemic? Do you think they're going to change the way they're working? Because a lot of them have accomplished things that they don't typically accomplish. Like they're turning around tooling in days instead of weeks. Yeah. Sometimes it's all hands on deck. Sometimes it's the people focus. Sometimes some of them are still investing in technology to help them get that tooling done quicker. So I keep thinking within a year, we're going to see this kind of a new face of the way molds are made and the way mold businesses are run. You have any opinion on that, any of you?
I would say, I mean, technology-wise, they're developing things to get materials out and machine these materials faster. Maybe skip steps by having suppliers do gun drilling or extra machining So when they come in, they don't have to do as much work to it. But there's also going to be the balancing act when some segments come back that have been slower in this time, that it's kind of that balancing between how fast can we get certain jobs out that are priorities versus these other segments as they come up stronger that are also going to need more materials. So it's going to be interesting, but anything that you can do to speed it up is going to stay, I would say, and keep costs down.
I would agree. Is there any technology that stands out to you guys? That's growing.
But additive,
Yeah,
additive manufacturing is definitely growing.
That's getting a lot more popular.
Yeah.
I've run into a lot of customers who are experimenting with conformal cooling and trying to get these really complex geometries going. So we're dabbling in that as well. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, the next 10 years, probably everybody will have a little printer in their shop.
Yeah,
you know?
and that goes back to training. That's a whole new, maybe not so much the next generation coming in, because they could be a little more of a blank slate compared to traditional people. That's a whole new mindset when you start getting into a subtractive industry is now going additive. It's a totally different way of designing products. You know, some don't even need tools or molds. I do know that your companies are getting into the material side of it, obviously, right, on additive, which I know you really can't speak to right now from what I understand, but keep me in mind for that. But I agree with you that can impact training in the future, right?
Yeah.
Part of the program.
And it's not just the materials, but also the actual production of some parts and using our design team and engineers who can help customers design their own parts. I mean, all of that comes back to us having good enough training where we can propose these solutions to our customers too. Because like Rob said, conformal cooling's one, but then there's also some testing on different applications where it's not just related to cycle time. So those are some really interesting ones. And we actually have kids who have come out of school, or new apprentices who have come out of school who have experience in the school learning about these different processes. So we like to learn from them too as they come in.
There you go. That's key. That's key. So how would you say, before I let you go, what would your advice be on how to, you guys were attracted to this industry, you got trained, you're still here, you're growing, you're moving along in your careers. What's advice to other companies within this space to attract that next generation?
Well, I would say the thing that has kept me with Edra the longest is there's always the room for growth. And I came in really going, I want to be outside sales. That's all I want to do. I'm very interested to do that. And I think it took me within a year and a half of traveling. I was like, you know what, maybe I want to be more in the shop or more in the office doing different projects. And I worked with Mike and another guy who was with us on what opportunity would make sense for both me and the company. So that's how I ended up switching my role into more of a marketing, internal marketing role, and then still committing to some time on the road as well as outside sales. So it was that flexibility and the opportunity to quickly grow within the company that has kept me with the company for so long.
Yeah, I'd agree. The opportunity for growth and learning new things and learning a wide variety of things is definitely pretty exciting. Yeah, also a good culture. We have a very good culture at Edra. So that's I think those are probably the biggest things. The culture. And
is the culture the one of just being open and the communication? Tell me, just like define what that culture is.
Yeah, it's very everybody knows each other. Feels like everybody's got each other's back, and it's very it's just a very open form of communication.
You never feel like you're looking over your shoulder.
Yeah, it feels like a very, even though we're owned by this big corporate conglomerate, it definitely feels very mom and pop at all of our locations. So
that's nice.
Yeah, everybody from the sales, pretty much everybody has a very good relationship with each other. So
that's great. How do you two interact on a daily basis nowadays?
Well, we were sharing an office, so I was sitting 6 feet in front of them. But now we're working remotely for the next, until this clears up. I think the governor's order is over the 6th. I think on the 6th, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, so I've been popping in and out of the office here and there just to ship samples, but just trying to socially distance. So, but yeah,
Following the precautions.
we
Right,
share
exactly.
an office. So yeah, yeah. I mean, I was in Chicago for a while, but you know, other than that, I see him every day. So
Okay.
Right.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I would just say that a couple of points you made earlier that, you know, there's a lot of different things going on now. And I think during these sort of times of change is when people learn a lot and apply different things that they feel work and they stick with them. I mean, I was on the phone this morning with somebody who said there were a large 55 mold package that was put out in April, I think it was, and it had to be finished in July. And this company then put molds out all over the place. We've been involved in them, and a lot of other people have. And they were going to lay off 300 people, but now they've hired 100 people because of this. And it's all to do with this. So, you know, I mean, it's pretty tough times and unusual times now, but I think in any transition or you can learn things that you can apply. As far as what we're trying to do at Edro is we're a small company, Rob said, run with a very family atmosphere within a very, very large group. Guys who join us, guys and girls that join us, they can really decide where and how far they want to go, depending on their own abilities. And that's the sort of person we want to attract. We're not going to drive people to do this and do that. People are going to be left a lot to prove to their own devices on what they want to do. This is part of the training, really, not to smother them, but let them be able to be, you know, feel that they're capable of making a decision. So, you know, make a few mistakes and learn from those mistakes and sort of thing.
Well, and they can make what I like is that they're making their own path. You're like presenting them this menu, right? You're showing them everything. And then it's up to you as an individual to figure out what you like, what you're good at, and then make it happen for yourself. Don't pigeonhole me into you have to be a machinist. You have to be whatever it might be. So I think that's refreshing.
Yeah, but it's also not just to send them on their way and turn our backs on them. I mean, they should be encouraged to come back and tell us if things don't work. Nick gave the example about how passionate he was to get into sales. And then once he got into it, he found, well, it perhaps wasn't exactly what he imagined. And this is exactly how things should be. You don't know when you leave school. I mean, I didn't know I wanted to come to America before I did, but you know, you have to look at the things this way. But to be able to get these bright people that are open and really want to develop and grow, that's going to be the success of our business. And I believe other businesses that make a similar kind of approach for their future and investment. Future
investment. I agree. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your time this afternoon. I appreciate you sharing your story. We should keep in touch as you continue to grow and make improvements and grow with this industry, especially after this whole crisis is over and done with and we become anew, hopefully. So again, thank you all for your time. And everybody out there, remember, for everything mold making, visit moldmakingtechnology.com.